Welcome to You and Your Pets. I'm Jim Horton, and as usual, we're here with our resident expert, Dr. Ernest Rogers of the Maplewood Animal Hospital, and we discuss a lot of different pet issues. We would like now to turn to pets and holidays. The holidays can be a dangerous time for pets.
Challenging time for owners and a dangerous time for pets, yes.
Tell me, what are some of the dangers you have to worry about?
Well, I think we can classify them into several different areas. Obviously, food can be a real concern. Such things that we already know about as chocolate. Chocolate can have cardiac effects and cause real bad problems for dogs. Fat from the chicken or turkey or pot roast, whatever you're making for your holiday festivities, fat from that can cause pancreatitis in a dog. So food in and of itself is not bad, and sharing a little bit of food with your pet is fine as long as it isn't something that's toxic to your pet or something that's going to give them long-term consequences. For instance, garlic and onions both have long-term consequences on the blood of an animal. Things like macadamia nuts, which, funny enough, I was talking to a toxicologist, 5 years ago, he didn't realize that that was an issue. Macadamia nuts are toxic to pets. Unfortunately, some of these foods, as I just mentioned, garlic, onions, macadamia nuts, raisins and grapes, have not immediate effects, but they have long-term effects on the body of the animal. So maybe 3 or 4 days after they've been ingested, we have a problem with that animal. Now we're trying to figure out, well, what happened? Things like chocolate have immediate effects. Other foods such as bones, bad meat or food that's been thrown out in the garbage and has been there for a while, develops some bacteria. All of those will have more immediate effects.
And of course, all the things you mentioned are in abundance during the holidays.
During the holidays, whether it's Hanukkah or Kwanzaa or Christmas.
Or even Easter.
Or, yes, even Easter, correct.
Right.
I wasn't thinking that far ahead, but yes, you're absolutely right.
Yeah. So the inherent problem, I mean, I'll take our dog as an example.
Max.
Our dog Max. Our dog Max is a little dog. He's a tiny little dog. But he can get something off the counter even though it's 6 inches in on the counter. He can get it off the counter. Now, I'm assuming that anyone with a large dog or with a cat who can leap up to a counter is probably running a risk just for the holidays no matter what.
I think that's true, especially when we have multiple guests, multiple people, so we have food out on the counter because we're preparing it. And I'll give you a couple of tricks on how to stop that in the second half of the show when we talk about how to correct some of these behaviors. But yes, you're absolutely right. Dogs are not visual animals. Yes, they can see, yes, they can find balls, yes, they'll go around and get things. However, dogs are primarily, and cats are primarily olfactory. So wrapping up the Hanukkah gelt, the chocolate Hanukkah gelt, or grandma's chocolates, or even their treats, and putting it under the tree doesn't fool them. They aren't looking for a certain wrapping like your kids would and say, oh, this must be they're smelling. And when they find that bag of treats, even though it's dog treats, and you wake up Christmas morning and find that an entire 4-pound bag of dog treats is gone, you've got a problem. So you've got to understand that dogs are primarily olfactory, cats are primarily olfactory. Take that stuff out of their way and hide it. Put it behind locked doors. Hide the key, because if they find the key, they might open the lock.
Well, one of the other problems is that when you have people, you're putting out hors d'oeuvres, for example, and they'll be on tables throughout the house. It's almost impossible to keep an eye on all of that all the time. But you really can't say, no, we're not going to put hors d'oeuvres out. So what do you do?
Well, I think there are several ways of handling that. Number one, you could board your dog. If you feel your dog is going to be intrusive in any way in a party and may be at risk, then certainly consider boarding your dog, either at a veterinarian or at a boarding facility for the evening. Not for a long time, but just for the evening. Give the dog a break. Don't forget, strangers in the house is just as stressful to the dog as anything else during Christmas. So that's one option.
And that's true for a cat as well.
And that's true for a cat as well. Many cats will just hide. Another option is to isolate your dog or cat in a room. Give them their favorite toy, their favorite blanket, their favorite food, and give them a timeout in a room in your house. Finally, if you do have people in, the people should be also watching. And unfortunately, many guests that come to my house don't have a sense of, well, this pet shouldn't have this. And they slip them a little caviar, or they slip them a little sardines or tuna or whatever else.
Or they give them a grape.
Or they give them a grape, because they aren't pet savvy. And in those cases, you want to have your guests be pet savvy. And if you can educate your guests when they come in, that can alleviate a lot of the problems that would exist.
There is a problem with some animals, though. When you try to put them in a room by themselves, they absolutely resent it. They scratch the door, they bark, they howl, they otherwise carry on and really end up disrupting things. If you finally let them out because you're tired of listening to it.
Right.
In that case, I guess boarding is really the answer.
Boarding is quite normally the answer. If you happen to have a friend you don't like who would take your dog and you don't want to invite him to the party, then get the dog over there. I mean, if you have younger children or children who are younger but living on their own, not coming to a party, neighbors who can't come to the party. I mean, there are lots of options, but the bottom line is animals are sometimes so stressed in a facility or in a party fashion, in a party atmosphere, that they become aggressive. Not only do they eat things off the table, but they can become aggressive, and they're always begging. And God help me, if I don't give this dog this little Ritz cracker with the onion dip on it, it's going to be horrendous. So I give him one. So yeah, that's one aspect of food and dogs. I think if we could move on to another aspect, ornaments. Ornaments, Christmas trees. When I was living in Montreal, we had a Hanukkah bush, but basically you take items of decoration and put them on trees. What's the problem with that? Well, your cat will climb up, knock them off. If they're glass, they'll cut themselves. If they smell good, they might chew them. So ornaments we talked first about food, and then I guess ornaments and decorations. Lit bulbs seem like a good thing to chew on until you're electrocuted. Wires, tinsel. Tinsel on a Christmas tree is one of the number one things I've seen personally that have blocked animals, blocked dogs.
So they swallow a bunch of it and it just becomes a huge ball in the intestine.
It's either metal or plastic string, and that can block them. The other thing is the string from the turkey. String from the turkey, you take it, throw it away. Well, the dog finds it, it smells like turkey, tastes like turkey, let's swallow it. Well, a string, as it goes through the intestine, opens up. And then it only gets so far before it gets stuck. It can't move along as normal food would. And then you start having it saw through little parts of the intestine. Now you have a dog with open wounds in its intestine, and that's a potential lethal situation. So lots of things can cause blockages, and that's just a couple of them, as well as the food.
Now, there's a third area that we haven't talked about, plants. There are a number of plants that will be brought in the house for the winter, or maybe brought in strictly for the season or the occasion, which are also a danger. Is that not correct? Yeah,
there's all kinds of things. I mean, I love mistletoe. I put it up. It has no value, but everyone thinks you should kiss under it, so I just carry mistletoe. But to a dog, mistletoe, poinsettias are both irritants. They won't kill your dog, but they'll make them feel pretty bad. So those are some of the plants. But one thing that we tend not to think of is if we have a Christmas tree and we have a bowl of water under that Christmas tree, not only are we adding chemicals to keep the tree fresh, but some of the sap and some of the chemicals in the tree is coming out into that water. Without covering that water up, that's another source for your dog to go and lick. Oh, I'm thirsty. Ooh, that smells good. And now your dog has an upset stomach because of what he's picked up from the tree or from what you've put into the water. So covering up the water is another issue with plants.
So it almost makes one nervous about having a pet in the house at all during holidays. I realize we're overstating the case here, but is it something where, just like child-proofing a house, you almost have to pet-proof a house during the holidays?
I think you have to pet-proof a house if you have a pet, no matter what.
But don't you have to do more?
Well, I guess, realistically, what you want to do is start off with good behavior, and you want to reward good behavior. You want the basics of sit, come, stay, and down to be well learned in that dog. And that gives you good control over the dog and good control of that dog or cat in your house. And once that's established, many of these problems that we're talking about will go away. I've seen owners that have come in with dogs have chewed on bones, turkey bones or steak bones, whatever, because the owner just couldn't go near the dog to take it out of their mouth. So the dog swallowed it, it chewed up its esophagus, now it's in the stomach, now I go in as a surgeon and I take it out. This could have all been prevented because the dog should have had good training. Now, not all dogs are amenable to training, and we know that. And some dogs are smarter than others, and I find the smart ones tend to get away with more. But the bottom line is good training as a puppy and as a young dog is what's going to save a lot of these problems that we're talking about now that potentially could happen around the holiday seasons.
So let's step back and get realistic here for a second. We notice after that all of a sudden that puppy dog over here or kitty is not quite acting like you thought they should be acting. You're not sure why, but they just aren't quite acting the way you expect them to act. What do you do?
Well, I think we have to establish what's causing them not to act properly. Sometimes it's just I'm been ignored, but many times it can be something I've eaten something and I don't feel so good. That tends to rear its ugly head, and what we tend to see is an animal that's belching, flatulent, passing gas. We tend to see animals that are trying to retch, and they'll be going, ooh, ooh. And you notice that in dogs or cats, but they aren't producing anything, or they're producing bile, or they're producing foamy liquid. That could just be an upset stomach. It could also be something in the stomach that's causing them to be nauseous. It could be a toxin. And when I say toxin, I differentiate that from poisons. Poisons are something that are man-made. Toxins are something that come from something living. So when I say toxin, I mean they got into poinsettias, they got into tree water. So those kind of things are what you'd notice. Lethargy, anxiety, upset stomach, vomiting, diarrhea.
Okay, so anything like that, then they basically should get on the phone and call the vet right away. Is that not correct?
Well, I think if you have a level of suspicion that they got into something, and you can trace it back to, oh yeah, half the turkey's gone and it was there yesterday, or I can't find where all the grapes went, or all the water's out of the tree, or all the poinsettia leaves are missing and the dog has a red tongue. I think if you can trace it back to something like that, then yes, you have to make a decision to call a health professional, a veterinarian, at your earliest convenience and discuss what the situation is, how much has been ingested, and where it came from. If, on the other hand, you think the dog is just overwhelmed by the party atmosphere and maybe had a little bit too much food or ate too quickly or was given something at the party, I would say watch him. Call your veterinarian if you're unsure, but if you feel comfortable, watch him or her and see how it progresses over an hour or two.
Okay, we've got to take a break. This is You and Your Pet. I'm Jim Horton with Dr. Ernest Rogers, and we will be right back.
Television is a powerful and influential medium that allows different groups the opportunity to produce programming that directly affects their own communities. Public, educational, and government access channels ensure that all people, regardless of race, age, gender, disability, religion, or economic status, have access to local government information and the use of a public communication forum. Make sure everyone has a voice. Support your local PEG channels.
Welcome back to You and Your Pets. I'm Jim Horton, and I'm here with Dr. Ernest Rogers of the Maplewood Animal Hospital, and we are discussing pets during holiday seasons in this particular segment. And I'd like to turn now to the behavioral aspects. What do you do to discourage puppy dog from raiding the kitchen when your back is turned?
Well, there are a lot of options here. One option that I like to use are gates. Gates are great. They work well. A little stretch gate that you can get at...
Like a child's gate.
Like a child's gate that you can get at Walmart, Target, Costco. I hate to name names, but any of those stores that carry children's implements. And you put it up at the door, and the dog gets up and says, oh, I can't get any further, I'll just sit here. Now, some dogs are big enough that they step over them, and some dogs are big enough or smart enough or strong enough to jump over them. And certainly they don't work for cats. Cats just go, oh, something to play with. So, but gates worked very well to either keep a dog in an area and still allow them to have the freedom to see what's going on, or to keep a dog out of an area. So that's one option that we can use. There are collars, and this takes much more work and much more training, but there are collars, and I personally do not agree with the electronic collars, but there is a citronella collar, which sprays citronella, which is the same stuff we use against mosquitoes. Mm-hmm. It's non-toxic, but it has a horrible lemon flavor or scent.
Yeah.
And you can put the collar on the dog, and you can have a little thumb press thing, and when the dog goes near the kitchen, you zap him with that, and he gets a spray of citronella, and he goes, oh, I don't want to go over there. I don't like that place.
Ah.
So that's another option. Behavioral modification is not something that's new. Excuse me. We're just talking about behavioral modification as it relates to stopping an animal from getting into trouble during the holidays. So now the more common things that we use for behavioral modification, believe it or not, something called a SCAT mat. SCATMAT. Now a SCAT mat is a mat that has little wires running through it, and you plug it in the wall, and it doesn't give any more of an electrical shock than you might get if you dragged your feet across a wool carpet and touched a fixture. So it gives about that much of a shock, but it's very, very effective from keeping the animals away. There's one you can buy that's big enough to fit completely under the tree, and that'll save the kittens from climbing up into the tree. Unfortunately, if you put presents on top of that, then the cat has a way to avoid the shock, or the dog. So that's one issue, SCAT mat, and it comes in many different forms. I've seen it in a 5x5 mat, 6 foot long by 1 foot wide mat for your couch, so if you don't want the dog on the couch. So that's another
Can
method.
people walk on these and with no danger to themselves?
Well, because the shock, I would imagine so. I haven't walked on
So,
it.
for example, I mean, if I wanted to keep the dog out of the kitchen, but I don't have a gate, could I stick a SCAT mat right in the doorway and just either step on it or walk over it?
Well, yes, if it's 12 inches wide and 5 feet long, I don't think that's going to keep a dog out. Dog will just jump over it.
Okay.
And if it's 5x5, then you'll have to walk on it, but I suspect that you might damage it more than get injured yourself.
Okay.
As I say, it's no more than a static shock that you would get from dragging your feet across the floor. However, there are other things that you can use. One is called sticky paws. And sticky paws is basically just two-sided tape. But it's big two-sided tape. It might be 2 feet wide. And you take this two-sided tape and you put it down where you don't want the cat to be. And you go, wow, this is pretty nice. Look at this, kitty cat. And as soon as the cat steps on it and sees that it's sticky, the cat doesn't want to go there anymore.
Oh, for gosh sakes.
And that's you can probably find online. I think it's called sticky paws.
Okay.
But you can also use regular two-sided sticky tape and just put lines of it where you don't want the cat to be. So that's another thing you can put on your counter. It's a little bit more difficult to remove and a little bit more difficult to work with than SCAT mat.
Well, you do have something here. I've got to interrupt, and I hope we can zoom in and see this, but you have an upside-down rat trap here.
Well, this is what I have. This is your regular mouse trap. The rat traps are a lot bigger than this. And the problem with the rat trap is that they're just too big. They're just way too strong. So what I've done is I've taken a mouse trap, and this is a typical mouse trap. I guess they've made better ones, but this is perfect for our purpose. And what I do is I hold it at the opposite end from where the thing is going to spring. And then I load it, and I set it all up. And we have one set up here.
Let's see if we can get a close-up of it. It's upside down. Let's see if we can get a close-up.
And then once you have it set up, you turn it upside down and put it gently so that it's ready to spring. Now, if you leave this on your counter, and you might want to take a little bit wider shot because it's going to go up about 2 feet in the air. If you leave this on the counter and the animal comes in, if they brush against it.
Yes, that scared me.
Now, the advantage of that is that no matter when the animal goes in and brushes against this trap, it's going to go off. So whether you're there, you're not there, if you put this on the counter, it'll go off when the animal goes by it. And to tell you just how effective it is, I wanted to film this. I wanted to do some filming of my cat up on the counter, and I trained it with one of these. And I took the cat and put it on the counter, it jumped down. I took the cat, put it up on the counter, and removed this, and it went up and it walked around. I put this up unset, and the cat wouldn't go up. That's how effective it is. So they don't know when it's set or unset. So once it's happened a couple of times, you come home and the trap's been set and tripped. Then you just put the trap up there. It doesn't matter. They don't know. They just don't want to go near it. They aren't going to take a chance. So it's.
Does this work for dogs as well?
I would imagine in certain situations you'd have to be more thoughtful about dogs, because dogs are silly enough to turn them over and touch them. But cats usually just try and step on them or step over them. And that's the reason why we turn them upside down, so that no animal will be injured. That's the thought. Now, dogs might go like that and get their nose tripped. But yeah, I think it would be effective for dogs. It would have to be used in a very special situation, though.
Okay. I had never seen that done, and I must say that it's an impressive demonstration.
I'm just full of wisdom, aren't I?
Are there any other major behavioral modification tools that we should be talking about?
Well, I can see many things that are an advantage. For instance, aluminum foil is something that dogs and cats really don't like. And putting aluminum foil balls hanging from strings where cats are urinating, that will stop them from urinating. Mothballs sometimes prevent animals from going into certain areas. So we really don't want to get into a situation where we're doing an awful lot of expensive things, but simple things like this seem to work.
Yeah, but isn't something like aluminum foil, particularly if it's thrown away, used in the kitchen's been covering the meat or something like that, is actually pretty dangerous, isn't it?
Right. So we want to take brand new aluminum foil.
It's got to be fresh
aluminum foil. Yeah.
And you just hang that down.
You put a knot in the end of a string. Put a string there. If the cat is peeing against a wall, you put several of these at different heights. And when the cat pees, it brushes against them, and he says, "That's not really what I want to do." There's also a couple of products, and we talked about people in the house and how anxious pets can be with people in the house. So can we switch to that aspect of behavioral modification?
Yes, I would love to.
So when we have dogs and cats in the house with strangers, because essentially to the dog, anyone who isn't family is a stranger, they can get quite anxious. Now there are two products on the market right now. One is called Feliway, F-E-L-I-W-A-Y, and the other one is called Adaptil, A-D-A-P-T-I-L. The Adaptil is a pheromone, as is the Feliway. They come in many different formats. One is a spray, one is a plug-in. And when you plug it in, it dispenses this odor, or the pheromone, that releases the proper, it's not sedation, but releases the proper pheromones that allow the animal to then be calmer. And it reduces anxiety. Even if you have two cats that are fighting, Feliway is a good thing. If you have two dogs that are upset, Adaptil is a good product to use. And you simply plug one in the area where the dog's going to be, and these two pheromone producing chemicals cause calming effect on your dog or your cat. So that's another thing you can use if you're going to have a party.
Okay, so in other words, the room where the people are going to be and the dog's going to be wandering, or cat's going to be wandering around, you just plug this in the wall like you would plug a deodorant or something in the wall.
Correct.
And it basically, they get mellow.
Well, hopefully they get mellow. We know that catnip makes them a little bit more mellow.
Yeah.
But yeah, Feliway and Adaptil are two products out in the market. I personally have not used them, but have recommended them to a lot of my clients who say that they work. So that's just another option for dealing with anxious animals, whether it's because of a party, because of the oncoming season, or because of whatever's happening in the neighborhood that's making them unusually, changes to the Christmas tree and other changes.
Okay, well, we have only 2 minutes left, so let's summarize for me what the owner should be doing during the holiday season.
Okay, well, I think we're looking at several issues here. Food and monitoring food and keeping food away from your animal is an important part. Ornaments, keeping ornaments and crystal and other things out of the reach of your pets is always a good thing to do. Then, of course, we're talking about plants, and plants should be put up high and out of the reach of pets. Finally, candles. Candles are very dangerous, and the animals like to rub against them and can burn themselves. So what kind of sign should we look for in our animals if we think they have gotten into something? Certainly retching, vomiting, diarrhea, lethargy, anxiety, changes in behavior of those types all should key us into maybe something's happened, and we should immediately find out if there has been contact with a toxin. And then finally, if that's happened, contacting an emergency clinic. There are emergency clinics open 24/7, even on Christmas, that you can talk to a veterinarian or go and see your regular veterinarian.
Okay, we've run out of time. I want to thank you very much. This has been You and Your Pets with Dr. Ernest Rogers of the Maplewood Animal Hospital.